Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your sources, boil them down, and really pull out those key insights, those moments where it all clicks so you can get up to speed fast.
And today, we're really diving into something foundational for, well, modern business. The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. It's not just theory, you know. Leaders everywhere, Tim Brown at IDU, Steve Blank, Scott Case from Startup America. They've all embraced these ideas.
Yeah, and I think it hits home because it tackles that really common, frustrating experience. Pouring heart and soul into a new product and a new venture, doing all the planning, and then it just doesn't land.
Exactly, that feeling of building something nobody actually wants. It's incredibly demoralizing.
So Rees comes along with this different approach. You mentioned 5 core principles.
That's right. 5 key ideas we'll unpack. First, this notion that entrepreneurs are everywhere. It's not just the garage startup anymore. It's anyone, really, creating something new when things are super uncertain.
Okay, so broader than we might think. What's second?
Second, entrepreneurship is management. Just having a great idea, well, it isn't enough. Startups need a particular kind of management, one that's built for navigating that uncertainty and driving growth.
Right, not just traditional management. And the third?
Validated learning. This is crucial. The main goal isn't just building stuff, it's learning how to build a sustainable business. And this learning, it has to be proven, validated through real experiments.
Okay, so learning is the real progress. Got it. Number 4.
The build, measure, learn feedback loop. This is like the engine of the whole thing. You build something based on an idea, you measure how real customers react, and then you learn. Do you keep going, or do you pivot, make a fundamental change?
Build, measure, learn. Okay, and the last one.
And finally, innovation accounting. Basically, a new way to measure progress for startups, holding innovators accountable, but in a way that actually makes sense, given all the unknowns they face. It's different from standard accounting.
So these 5 principles together, they offer a kind of roadmap for navigating that foggy future when you're trying to build something new.
Exactly. A way to steer instead of just following a potentially flawed map.
Okay, let's dig into that. Why do those old school detailed business plans often lead startups astray?
Well, think about it. Those methods, deep market research, 5-year projections, they worked better, perhaps, when markets were more stable, more predictable. But for a startup, we're dealing with huge unknowns. Who are the customers, really? What problem are you actually solving?
It's like planning a cross-country road trip down to the minute before you even know if the car works or where the roads go.
Precisely. And the book talks about this idea of achieving failure. Sounds weird, right?
Yeah, what does that mean?
It means you execute your plan perfectly, you hit all your milestones, maybe you launch with big splash, you did everything the plan said, but the plan itself was based on wrong assumptions about the market.
So you succeeded at doing the wrong thing.
Exactly. You forecasted, say, 1 million users, built the capacity, launched, and crickets. Because nobody actually wanted what you so perfectly built. You achieved failure. And sometimes the more effort you put into that flawed plan, the harder it is to let go.
That makes sense. The sunk cost fallacy kicks in.
Yeah.
So the lean startup alternative is this build, measure, learn loop. You called it a steering wheel.
Yeah, that's Rees's analogy. Instead of a fixed map, you have a steering wheel and a dashboard. You build a little, see what happens, measure, learn from it, and then adjust your course. Constant correction based on reality, not just assumptions.
Okay, let's go back to that first principle. Entrepreneurs are everywhere. You said it's broader than we think. So who else fits this definition?
It definitely includes people inside big companies trying to launch new things. They're often called intrapreneurs. They face the same kind of crazy uncertainty as a founder starting from scratch, even if they have more resources.
Right, the book mentions this guy, Mark, who wasn't a typical startup founder, was he?
No, not at all. He was a manager in a big, successful company, had resources, had a team, had a vision. He even knew he needed to take risks. But he was stuck. He didn't have a process for navigating the uncertainty.
So having the resources isn't enough. You need the method.
Exactly. It shows these principles aren't just for tiny startups scraping by. They apply just as much inside established players trying to innovate.
And the Intuit SnapTax example really drives this home, doesn't it? Innovation from within.
Absolutely. SnapTax, their mobile tax app, wasn't some outside acquisition. It was an internal team. But crucially, management gave them what they called an island of freedom.
An island of freedom. Sounds nice.
It means they had autonomy, they could experiment quickly outside the usual corporate processes, started super small, just 5 people, tiny budget, It shows a big company can do this if they intentionally apply these lean ideas.
And it seems like Intuit's founder, Scott Cook, had a real awakening about this. Their old ways weren't cutting it for innovation.
Right. Cook saw that even though Intuit was well managed by traditional standards, too many new things were failing to catch on. They weren't learning effectively.
So they shifted.
Big time. They invested heavily in systems to run experiments faster, to test ideas with real customers quickly, get data back, and analyze it. Cook basically shifted leadership's role from gatekeeping ideas to fostering experimentation. Let's test everything.
Turning parts of the company into mini startups, essentially.
Pretty much. It was a fundamental change in culture towards learning.
Which brings us neatly to that third principle. Validated learning. This isn't just about building features, is it?
No, not at all. Validated learning is about proving with real evidence that you're learning how to build a sustainable business. Are customers actually using this? Are they paying for it? Is the core idea working? That's the real progress, not just lines of code written.
The learning is the progress.
Yes. The most valuable thing you get from an experiment isn't the feature itself, it's the validated learning insight.
And the IMVU story in the book is a great, kind of painful example of this. They started off way off track, right?
Oh, yeah. They had this brilliant strategy back in 2004. They were going to make an add-on for existing instant messengers like A and Yahoo. Huge market, right? Hundreds of millions of users.
Seemed logical. Leverage the existing networks.
Exactly. But after they launched, almost no one used it. They built all this cool tech avatars, virtual world, commerce engine. But the basic idea was wrong.
So all that effort on features nobody even saw.
Pretty much. They were tweaking things, fixing bugs, arguing about details, but users weren't even getting far enough to care about those details. They couldn't get people to even try it properly, let alone pay for anything. They were making it better by their own standards, but customer behavior wasn't changing.
Ouch. So how did they figure it out? What was the learning moment?
They finally started talking to actual potential users, showing them early versions. Teenagers, tech folks, they got excited about the avatars, the personalization.
Okay, positive sign.
But then they'd say, okay, download the add-on for your IM. People were like, huh, what's an add-on? Mainstream users thought avatar chat was weird.
Ah. And they also assumed people wanted to chat with existing friends.
Yeah, big wrong assumption. Turns out people wanted to explore this new virtual space first. Maybe meet new people through their avatars before inviting their real-world friends.
So the core idea of an IM add-on was just flawed.
Completely flawed. It took a lot of painful feedback, but they realized customers didn't want an add-on. They wanted a standalone network. They weren't scared of a new program. And they liked the idea of meeting new people virtually. Their initial strategy crumbled under real-world feedback.
It really highlights that difference between what you think customers want, or even what they say they want, versus what they actually do.
Absolutely. And that's why Rise distinguishes this from just agile development. Agile makes you efficient at building stuff, but you can be super efficient building the wrong thing.
Right. Agile doesn't automatically mean you're building something valuable.
Exactly. Validated learning is about making sure the efficient building is pointed in the right direction.
Okay, so if validated learning is the goal, how do you get that learning efficiently? That leads us to minimum viable products, MVPs.
Right. The MVP. It's the fastest way to test your core assumptions to get through that build, measure, learn loop with the least effort possible.
And it's not necessarily the smallest product you can imagine.
No, that's a common misunderstanding. It's the version that lets you learn the most about your key assumptions with the minimum resources. It's all about testing those big, risky guesses first.
The Zappos story is the classic example here, isn't it? Selling shoes online.
It really is. So simple, but brilliant. Nick Swinmurn wanted to test, will people buy shoes online? Instead of building a huge website and warehouse, he went to local stores, took pictures of shoes.
Put them online.
Put them online. If someone ordered, then he'd go buy the shoes and ship them.
Wow. So zero inventory risk initially.
Exactly. That super simple MVP tested the core idea, and he learned about customer service, payments, shipping, everything before investing big money. And, well, Zappos sold to Amazon for over $1 billion. Started with that basic test.
Incredible. And it's not just for tech or e-commerce. The HP volunteer campaign example shows it applies elsewhere, too.
Right. HP wanted this big employee volunteer program. Instead of building the whole thing based on assumptions about what motivates employees,
they could have run a small test first.
Exactly. Maybe offer a really cool volunteer gig to a small group of already engaged employees. See if they bite. If even the keen ones don't re-engage later, maybe your core assumption about motivation is wrong. Learn that before you roll out a massive, expensive program.
Test the riskiest assumption first. That seems key.
Absolutely critical. What's the belief that, if wrong, kills the whole idea? Test that first as cheaply and quickly as possible.
But isn't there a fear of putting out something, well, basic, something low quality? Won't that damage your brand?
That fear is real, definitely. But Ries argues the goal of the MVP isn't perfection, it's learning. Think about early Craigslist, just an email list. Or Groupon's first version, basically a blog with PDF coupons.
Right, they weren't polished.
Not at all. And IMVU, when users wanted avatar movement, the first thing they shipped was this clunky teleport feature. Just disappear and reappear. The team thought it was terrible.
Hippie users.
They loved it. It proved movement was essential, the learning was valuable, even if the feature wasn't elegant yet. The simple version was enough to validate the need.
So learning over perfection at that stage. What about competitors stealing your brilliant MVP idea?
Ries argues that's usually an overblown fear early on. Honestly, your biggest problem is getting anyone, customers, investors, anyone to even notice you.
Right, obscurity is a bigger enemy than competition at first.
Pretty much. Established companies are usually too busy with their own stuff to jump on some tiny startup's basic MVP. Your speed of learning is your real advantage, not secrecy.
Okay, so you've got an MVP out there you're measuring. How do you know if you're actually making real progress? That's innovation accounting, right?
Exactly. Innovation accounting is about measuring what matters, not just vanity metrics. It gives you a structured way to see if you're genuinely learning and moving towards a sustainable business.
Vanity metrics, like total downloads, website hits.
Yeah, things that look good on the surface, but don't tell you if people are actually engaging, if they're sticking around, if they're paying. Innovation accounting focuses on actionable metrics. It's about setting a baseline, running experiments to improve those key metrics, and seeing if your changes actually cause the improvement.
And the book mentions the 3 A's: acquisition, activation, retention.
That's a core part of it. Acquisition, how are people finding you? Activation, are they trying the product and having a good first experience? Are they getting it? And retention, are they coming back? Or are they churning out?
High churn would be a big red flag, even if acquisition numbers look good.
A huge red flag. You can't grow if you're losing customers as fast as you gain them.
The Grokkit example illustrates the danger of those vanity metrics, doesn't it?
Yes, Grokkit, the online learning platform, they had growing numbers of total users, questions answered. Looked good, right?
Seemed okay.
But those numbers masked the fact that they weren't really improving learning outcomes or keeping users engaged long term. Because they weren't focused on the right actionable metrics and weren't running controlled tests, they couldn't tell what was actually working or why. Lots of activity, but not necessarily real progress.
So how do you figure out what's actually working? Split testing, A/B testing.
Exactly. A/B testing is crucial for innovation accounting. You show different versions of something, a feature, a headline, a price to different groups of users at the same time.
And see which performs better on those key metrics.
Precisely. It takes the guesswork out. You get clear data on cause and effect. Did this specific change lead to more signups or better retention or whatever you're measuring? It moves you from opinions to evidence.
The book also brings up Kanban boards in this context. How does that fit in?
Kanban is a way to visualize your workflow, often used in manufacturing and software. Crucially, it usually involves limiting work in progress, how many things you're working on at once.
How did that help with learning?
By limiting work in progress, it forces you to finish things and, importantly, validate them, do the measure and learn steps before starting lots of new stuff. It prevents you from building a huge pile of potentially unvalidated features. The pull comes from the need to learn, not just the desire to build more.
So it keeps the focus on that build, measure, learn cycle.
Exactly. It enforces the discipline.
And making the data, the reports from innovation accounting, accessible and understandable. That sounds important too.
Vital. Rudy stresses using tangible units instead of abstract numbers like website hits. Talk about customers acquired or, even more powerfully, customers lost. Everyone understands losing customers is bad.
Makes it real.
Yes. And share those reports widely. Create a culture where the whole team sees the real data and decisions are based on that validated learning.
Okay, so you're building, measuring, learning with innovation accounting. You get the results back from your latest experiment. Now what?
Right.
This is the pivot or persevere moment.
Exactly. This is where the rubber meets the road. You look at the data. Are you making real progress towards your goal? Are the metrics moving in the right direction significantly?
And if they are,
If the data shows your core hypotheses are being validated and you're on the right track, you persevere. You keep optimizing, maybe run more experiments to refine things.
But the data isn't good. Or maybe it's just flat.
Then you face the tough decision. Pivot. A pivot isn't just giving up, it's a structured course correction. You change a fundamental part of your strategy, but you do it based on what you've learned. You keep your learnings, but change direction.
The Vodafone example in the book really shows this in action, right? They went through several pivots.
They did. Their mission was civic engagement, started as a social network for voters, got some early users, but growth stalled, so they pivoted.
What did they try?
They tested different models. First, engagement discussions. Didn't scale. Then, transactional activists paying to reach voters. Better, but still not quite there. Finally, a platform model, kind of like AdWords for political campaigns.
And they got faster at pivoting.
Noticeably faster. Their first MVP took months. Later pivots were much quicker. They were learning how to test ideas faster. It shows pivots aren't failures. They're strategic adjustments based on evidence.
It sounds much better than being, as the book calls it, stuck in the land of the living dead.
Yeah. That's where you have some customers, some revenue, enough to survive maybe, but you're not really growing, not hitting the vision, you're just existing.
And maybe too attached to the current path to make a needed change.
Exactly. You keep hoping things will magically get better. It's a dangerous place to be because you're burning time and resources without making real progress. Pivoting takes courage, but sometimes it's essential.
And there are different types of pivots, right? It's not just one kind of change.
Yeah, Riss has outlined several, like a zoom-in pivot where one feature becomes the whole product, or zoom out the product becomes just one feature of something bigger.
What else?
Customer segment pivot, focusing on different users. Customer need pivot, realizing you're solving the wrong problem. Platform pivot, switching between being an app and a platform. Changes in business architecture, how you capture value, your engine of growth, channel, technology. Lots of ways to pivot based on learning.
So it gives you a framework for thinking about how to change strategy.
Precisely. It's not random. It's structured change anchored in learning.
Now, is it true that once you find product market fit, you're done pivoting?
Oh, definitely not. That's a common myth. Markets change, competitors emerge, customer needs evolve. Even successful companies need to keep learning and adapting. Think about Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. That often requires significant strategic shifts after initial success.
So continuous learning, continuous potential for pivots.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing capability, not a one-time fix.
Okay, let's say you found something that works, maybe after a pivot or two. How do you actually grow the business sustainably? This is where the engines of growth come in.
Yes. Engines of growth are the specific, repeatable mechanisms that drive new customer acquisition. Ries focuses on three main ones.
Which are?
The viral engine, the sticky engine, and the paid engine.
Viral sounds like word of mouth.
Essentially, yes. Growth happens as a direct result of customers using the product. The classic example is Hotmail.
Right, the little powered by Hotmail link in every email.
Exactly. Every user sending an email automatically exposed the service to new potential users. It created this inherent loop. That's viral growth.
Okay, what about the paid engine? Sounds straightforward.
It is, conceptually.
Yeah.
You pay to acquire customers through advertising, sales teams, etc. The key here is the math.
The math.
Your lifetime value, LTV, how much profit you expect from a customer over their entire relationship with you, has to be greater than your cost per acquisition, CPA, what you spent to get that customer.
LTV CPA. Otherwise, you're losing money on every new customer.
Precisely. If that equation works, you can pour more money into the paid engine and scale growth. If not, it's unsustainable.
Makes sense. And the third one, the sticky engine.
The sticky engine is all about retention. Keeping the customers you have and minimizing churn. Think subscription businesses or products where users build up valuable data or networks over time.
So the key metric there is churn rate, how many customers you lose.
Exactly. You need a very low churn rate for the sticky engine to work. If people leave quickly, it doesn't matter how many new ones you bring in, you're constantly refilling a leaky bucket. High retention is the fuel.
And the book suggests focusing on one engine at a time. Why is that?
Because each engine requires different skills, different metrics, different tactics. Trying to master all three at once usually means you don't master any of them.
Spreading yourself too thin.
Right. Most successful startups really figure out and optimize one primary engine first. They might have elements of others, but they focus their main growth efforts. Once one is humming, maybe they explore another, but focus is key initially.
Okay, so you've got your engine running. But inevitably, things break. Problems happen. How does Lean Startup help you deal with that systematically? The 5 whys.
Yes, the 5 whys. It's a deceptively simple but powerful technique from Toyota. When something goes wrong, you don't just fix the symptom. You ask why, repeatedly, usually about 5 times, to drill down to the root cause.
To get beyond the surface problem.
Exactly. Often, what looks like a technical problem is actually rooted in a human or process issue.
The IMVU server failure example showed this, right?
Perfectly. Server fails. Why? Obscure subsystem broke. Why? Team didn't know that subsystem well. Why? They weren't trained on it. Why? Their manager didn't prioritize that training.
So a server crash leads back to a management decision about training.
Exactly. Asking why repeatedly uncovered the systemic root cause, not just the immediate technical trigger.
And then there's this idea of proportional investment when fixing things found through the 5 whys.
Right. It means the fix should match the level of the problem you uncovered. If it's a small, isolated glitch, the first why, maybe a small fix is fine. But if the 5 whys reveals a deep process flaw or a training gap, like the 5th why, you need a more significant systemic investment to prevent it from happening again and again.
Don't just patch the symptom. Address the root cause appropriately.
That's the idea. It links problem solving directly to learning and continuous improvement. You should do a 5 whys analysis pretty much any time something unexpected happens, good or bad.
Makes sense. Another concept from lean manufacturing that pops up is batch size. Why is working in small batches so important for startups?
It seems counterintuitive, right? Wouldn't it be more efficient to do a whole bunch of things at once?
Yeah, that's the temptation.
But small batches let you find problems much faster. Think of Toyotas and Honda Accord. Any worker can stop the whole assembly line if they see one defect.
So you catch the error before you've made hundreds of faulty products.
Exactly. Small batches mean faster feedback loops. If you design one feature, build it, test it, you find out quickly if it's flawed. If you design 20 features before building or testing any, you might have built 20 flawed features before you realize the mistake.
That sounds like the large batch death spiral the book mentions.
It is. You think you're being efficient doing big chunks of work, but then a problem discovered late forces massive rework, creates huge delays, and everything grinds to a halt. Designers finish tons of drawings, hand them off, engineers find a fundamental issue, and boom, everything goes back. It slows things down dramatically in the long run.
So small batches, faster cycles, quicker learning.
That's the core benefit. It reduces waste and speeds up validated learning.
And this ties into hypothesis pull versus customer pull.
Right. Customer pull is just building what customers ask for right now. Hypothesis pull means your work is driven by the need to test your next most important hypothesis.
So what do we need to learn next to reduce risk or validate our strategy?
Exactly. You design and build things specifically to run the experiment that will give you that learning. The need to learn pulls the work through the system. The Alphabet Energy example, the clean tech startup, showed them focusing experiments on testing core hypotheses about specific customer needs and willingness to pay, guiding their development.
So it's learning-driven development, not just feature-driven.
Precisely.
Okay, finally, let's talk about applying all this inside big established companies. It seems challenging. How can they foster this kind of lean innovation?
It is challenging because large organizations often have established processes designed for efficiency and predictability, which can stifle the kind of experimentation needed for disruptive innovation.
So what's the solution?
One key approach Ries discusses is creating dedicated, protected spaces for innovation, sometimes called an innovation sandbox.
Like the island of freedom at Intuit?
Exactly like that. You need small, autonomous teams. Give them resources scarce but secure so they're focused but not constantly fighting for budget. Give them independent authority to make decisions and run experiments quickly, and give them a real stake in the outcome.
And shield them from the mothership's bureaucracy.
Crucially, yes. Protect them from standard procedures, metrics, and short-term pressures that would kill a fragile new venture. Let them operate by lean startup rules within that sandbox, focus purely on validating a new business model through build, measure, learn.
So the large company can explore risky new territory without disrupting its core business.
That's the goal. It allows them to manage a portfolio of innovations, placing bets on the future while running their existing operations efficiently. It requires deliberate structural and cultural adjustments.
So pulling it all together, the lean startup
Yeah.
really offers this comprehensive way to deal with uncertainty when you're building something new. It's about learning fast, right?
Absolutely. Prioritize validated learning. Use rapid experiments, get real customer feedback constantly, and use that feedback to decide whether to pivot or persevere. It applies whether you're literally in a garage or inside a Fortune 500 company.
It feels like a toolkit, really. A mindset for tackling any kind of project where the outcome isn't certain.
It definitely is. Founder, entrepreneur, even just someone curious about solving problems better. These principles offer a powerful, adaptable approach. Focus on learning first.
And it makes you wonder, in a world that just feels increasingly uncertain, could this build, measure, learn approach apply more broadly, beyond business?
That's a really interesting thought. Could we tackle social problems or even personal challenges with this kind of iterative, learning-focused mindset? It's definitely something to chew on.
A provocative thought to end on. If this deep dive sparked your interest, definitely check out Eric Ries's The Lean Startup itself for more depth and practical techniques.
Yeah, highly recommended for anyone involved in creating something new.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep experimenting,